steam locomotives. Powered by the expansion of steam were the workhorses of railways for over a century, burning fuel heated water into steam which drove pistons connected to the wheels. These iconic machines, once ubiquitous, have largely been replaced by diesel and electric locomotives, but remain beloved symbols of a bygone era. But however, most steam locomotives, once the backbone of rail transportations, are now extinct in mainline service. The reign ended as diesel and electric engines offered greater efficiencies, reliability, and power, while a few iconic steam locomotives remain preserved for heritage railways enthusiasts. The thunderous wheels of these iron giants had faded into history, leaving behind a legacy of innovations and industrial might. For today's video, I'll be going through 14 extinct steam locomotive classes from east to west, north to south. And so, here's my top 14 extinct steam locomotives. Number 14. UN Pacific's 42 Mountains. The UN Pacific MT class mountain types are 42 mountain steam locomotives, with the total of 65 mountains being bought by the UN Pacific into 3 batches, with the first batch of the MT1s being numbered 7,000 to 739 being built in the year 1922, and then another batch of MT1s numbered 7850 to 7064 being built in 1923, and finally the MT2s numbered from 7065 to 7069 being built in 1924. These steam locomotives are placed into revenue service hauling both freight and passenger trains for the UN Pacific. However, during its service life on the UN Pacific, one of the mountains, 7002, was streamlined for the train to 49ers, and this locomotive is not the only one to be streamlined, as it's one of 2 steam locomotives to be streamlined, the other one being UN Pacific 2906, a 462 Pacific, in which some UN Pacific specifics are now preserved. These mountains played a crucial role in the UN Pacific's operations during their time and even in World War II. However, like many steam locomotives, they were eventually replaced by diesel powers in the mid-20th century, and unfortunately, they met the scrapper's torch, and all mountains are now gone, faded into the history book of the UN Pacific. It's a shame really that a UN Pacific 42 mountain is not preserved, but we would like to have one preserved mountain, because we don't really have that many mountains in preservation. The only mountains I can think of as of now in my head is CN6060, a UNF mountain, Frisco 1522, and 2 of New York Central's Mohawks. So as they call the mountains Mohawks, what do you expect? Number 13. The Southern Pacific's GS5s. The GS5s is the only class of GS Northern type steam locomotives to only have 2 steam engines, those are being 4458 and 4459, in which these 2 Northerns are different from the many other GS Northerns. As for 4458, it has the roller bearings from the Timken company, and for 4459, it uses SKF brand roller bearings. These are the only 2 locomotives that have different roller bearings than the other GS Northerns. These locomotives are built from 1942 to 1958, with 4458 being built in 1942 and 4459 being built in 1958 for their use on passenger service on the Southern Pacific. They first originally wore the delayed paint scheme when first built, but before being repainted to black during its final years on the Southern Pacific. And once retirement came, they met the scrapper's torch, and then the GS5s are nothing more than a dust into the Southern Pacific's history. Luckily, we do have 2 surviving GS Northern's to continue the GS class history, one of which is being the famous 4449, a GS4 being owned by the city of Portland, located in Portland, Oregon. And then we have the 4460, a GS6 now owned by the National Museum of Transportation, located in St. Louis, Missouri. So, it's nice to see these 2 engines still continuing the legacy of the GS class students. Number 12. The Grand Trunk Western U4B Northerns. I know some people call point out Grand Trunk Western 6400, which is now preserved and on display at the National Museum of Science and Technology in Ottawa, Canada. But that engine is a U4A, not a U4B. The DGW U4B Northerns are a series of 44 Northern type steam engines being built by the Lima Locomotive Works in 1938, being number 6405 to 6410, with a total of 6 Northerns being built, and also being streamlined for the passenger service. But there was something called freight trains, since the DGW has too many Northerns for their passenger trains. However, once digitalization came to the GCW, the U4B Northerns were retired and were all scrapped. Now the surviving U4B Northerns survive into preservation. However, they did get a little recognition in the year 2016. In the 2016 movie Thomas and Friends: The Great Race, U4B Northern 6407 was chosen to represent North America, and it was named Vinny, which he participated in the strong ascension competition and also causing a little disruption during the ascension competition. So it's kinda nice to see these U4B Northers getting some recognition. Now for number 11, this is the only extinct Navigate steam locomotives to be on this list. Now, what is this steam locomotive class, you may be asking? Well, it's the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad Class C21s. The DGW Class C21 was a Class of 2AL consolidation Navigate steam engines, with only 2 examples ever being built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works for the Crystal River Railroad in 1900, number 101 and 102. However, they will later be purchased by the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad and be renumbered to 430 and 431. And then finally, to be later purchased by the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad in 1924 and renumbered once again to 360 and 361. Through whole freight trains on the Navigate system until being withdrawn from revenue service, and unfortunately both of them were scrapped, with 360 being scrapped on August 7, 1950 and 361 being scrapped on November 15, 1951, rendering the DGW Railroad Class C21 extinct. It's really a shame that these 2 locomotives are not preserved, but it would be nice if one of them is preserved to keep the C21 class legacy alive, but looks like fate has other answers for them. However, we still have a handful of DGW Navigate steam locomotives now preserved, and some of them running excursions on different railroads such as the Durango and Silverton Railway. So it's safe to say that DGW Navigate steam locomotives are still ongoing to this day. Now for number 10, this is a one-off steam locomotive that is different from the rest of the locomotives during its service life. What locomotive am I referring to? Well, Canadian National K5A Hudson number 5700. Now, I know what you guys may be thinking. This image I'm showing you is the 5700 preserve. But however, that is not the real 5700, but one of her sisters. So, let me explain. Ever since the New York Central built the first Hudson in 1927, railroads such as the Nickel Plate Road and the Chicago-Boston and Quincy Railroad will make their own Hudsons for the passenger or freight service. As for Canadian National though, the Hudsons were not very popular in that railroad. As for the real 5700, it was built by the Montreal Locomotive Works in 1930 as one of 5 K5A Hudsons to be built for the CNR. Unlike its competitor, the Canadian Pacific Railway, or CPR, which had a total of 65 Hudsons. They were built especially for the very competitive Montreal to Toronto passenger service. The Hudsons performed well on short trains, but when traffic grew beyond 9 cars, they couldn't handle the fast schedule, and so they were replaced by Canadian Nationals 44 Northerns, and they were reassigned to the Toronto-London Sarina/Windsor service. When dieselization came to the Canadian National Railway, the K5As, along with the other classes of steam locomotives, will be retired. But the last K5A didn't retire until 1967, 5 years right after the American Railroad gave up steam. After retirement, there were plans for a 5700 to be preserved and be sent to a museum. However, she was later scrapped due to miscommunications. But however, we do have 2 Hudsons preserved, 5702 and 5703 importantly. The 5703 was sent to the Elgin County Railway Museum, but not as the real 5703, but instead of the 5700, after Canadian National was aware about the real 5700 being scrapped. She still resides at the Elgin County Railway Museum in St. Thomas, Ontario to this day, under disguise as the 5700.